it's my job to talk about reimagining going forward, but I thought maybe I'll spend just a second on reimagining going backward. It did have a name, Lila, you just didn't like it. In 2005, my organization launched an initiative called the Shrinking Cities Institute, and we've since really stopped using that phrase because it's not very accurate. Cleveland and cities like it don't shrink. The city pretty much stays the same size as it's always been. The population declines. And what's left are these holes and these gaps. And I think what you've seen this afternoon are some really creative examples of things that we can do, the things that we can all do, to begin to fill the holes in order to bring together the fragments of a city that's lost a lot of people in a way that kind of brings cohesiveness back to our urban fabric. So I don't know, it was probably 2005 when I organized a panel for the National Conference of the American Planning Association on shrinking cities and these questions of vacancy and population decline. And we had about 7 people in the audience. I'm not exaggerating. There were more speakers than there were people listening. And, you know, I think at the time people really weren't tuned in to the kinds of challenges that cities like Cleveland face. But since then, you know, the global economic meltdown, the foreclosure crisis have really made Cleveland's problems, you know, much more widespread, particularly throughout the Great Lakes and the Northeast, but even beyond. So I think we have this moment where people are looking at Cleveland and looking at the experiments that we've begun. Around the same time, I actually got invited to a conference. I'm an academic, so I travel to conferences a lot. But the University of California at Berkeley also had a Shrinking Cities Research Center. And I don't exactly know why the Bay Area would have such a thing. But I went to this conference and I just kind of casually made this remark about the luxury of vacancy that we have in Cleveland, and someone in the audience said, well, what do you mean by that? And I didn't actually know, because I often say things now and then figure out what I mean later. But I think as we kind of progress through this effort, I think I'm beginning to get a little bit more of a sense of it. But in any case, the American Planning Association now has finally weighed in, you know, after these many years, on the topic of decline and urban vacancy, and they refer to their initiative as cities in transition, which a little bit cracks me up because, I mean, all cities are in transition, aren't they? I mean, maybe not Pompeii and colonial Williamsburg, but I mean, real cities, living cities change. And I think that when we speak of the luxury of vacancy, it means that we have this tool, we have this opportunity to change and then change again as the city and the world change around us. I should show these slides before I get my 2-minute warning. So here's all I'm saying, is that, you know, where reimagining is going, we began with these 56 projects that, you know, have been implemented so beautifully across the city at the very neighborhood scale. And they have an impact on the surrounding neighbors, and they have a really strong public education component, and they allow, you know, for experimentation with new ideas about urban form and the ways that urban landscapes can, you know, enhance a neighborhood. So, so from there, you know, we can begin to think about, you know, kind of collections, constellations of vacant land projects. And I think I'm starting here with some pictures related to water. The first was a neighborhood rain garden. And here's an example that might show a series of water-related interventions, rain gardens and the like, building a larger system. And I start with water for a really important reason. I mean, when we think about where reimagining can go, I don't think we need to make this overly complicated. We need to protect the lake, you know, because we should protect the lake as if our lives depended on it, because, in fact, they actually do. And so, you know, can we begin? It's true. Can we begin then to think about how each of these individual actions can build to a system that protects Lake Erie and the entire Great Lakes system? You know, so as vacant land inventories grow, and as we can begin to consolidate more parcels, we can have larger expanses of interventions, of vacant land interventions that are transformed into systems that protect the lake. Here's an example from Philadelphia. Philadelphia, by the way, we have 20,000 vacant lots. They have 40,000 vacant lots. And so they're able to have some projects of larger scale. But I think this is where we're heading. This is Sailor Grove, which is a large-scale stormwater wetland that was constructed by the Water Department on a large piece of underutilized property. And it's more than a green infrastructure system. It's an amenity. It's something that you want to be near. Now, the point I think it's really important to remember, because people ask me this all the time, aren't we suburbanizing the city? Aren't we de-urbanizing the city? And the answer, I think, is an emphatic no. You know, just because we reuse vacant land now doesn't preclude the possibility of development in the future. A day will come when we'll be building houses in Cleveland again. Won't it, Daryl? Soon? It's going to happen, you know? And so what we can do with vacant land interventions, with projects like this, is not only stabilize and improve conditions now, but also set up opportunities for future economic development, for real estate development, for construction. So that, you know, the idea, this is an idea that came out of the Netherlands, actually. The idea is that we shouldn't lose what we've learned in this time of crisis. If we agree that what we need to do is to protect the lake, we do that no matter what. The idea stays the same. The form can change. So this is an idea of a wetland feature in a dense urban neighborhood. If we begin to re-densify certain neighborhoods, we can still perform the same function, just maybe on a smaller piece of land so that there's room to build around it. This is a park that is a hard space most of the season, except when it rains, then it becomes a water feature in the neighborhood. Conceptual. Okay, so again, to this idea of not like making things overly complicated, what can reimagining do? We can protect the lake, and we can feed the hungry. Simple as that. Water and food. You know, Cleveland is routinely one of the most impoverished major cities in the country. There are hungry people here, and we know how to turn land into calories. When I say we, I kind of mean these guys, because my own garden's rather pitiful. But the point is that there's no reason for people to be hungry if we are focused and strategic in our actions, if we can really convert this surplus that's a liability in city neighborhoods and increasingly in the inner ring suburbs into a resource for producing food. So it starts again at the smallest scale, the scale of a community garden that we're seeing all across the city and throughout the region. You know, and it gets bigger. You know, this is the farm in Ohio City. And we can go back in time, 100 years ago, and Helen mentioned when Cleveland led the country in terms of, you know, innovation for farming in conjunction with schools. Cleveland was growing then. Cleveland was growing rather rapidly, and so we didn't have a surplus of land, but we had the vision of calories and food production within the city. And so where do we go in the future? Is Cleveland going to be one big farm? Can we try innovative new methods? This is an idea that, I don't know if it'll actually work, but it looks good in the drawing, that we could take a foundation of a demolished house, fit it with a solar envelope, and it becomes a very small-scale greenhouse facility in the context of a neighborhood. You know, one that can produce heat and food, fish, lots of different ways that the biocellar could be used. Then we get more dense, perhaps, in certain parts of the city. Can we keep the idea and change the form? This is a project in New York City that is a farm created out of construction sonotubes, cardboard tubes, that produces an enormous amount of food on a very small urban footprint. And heck, I mean, moving further into the future, you know? I mean, when real estate values rebound, are we still committed to producing food here? We could go vertical, you know, there are options. And so the idea here is not that we commit to one sort of land use in perpetuity, greening of the city, which is important, but we use vacant land to adapt to change and to respond to the conditions around us. Here's an article out of the most recent issue of Landscape Architecture, Eat Your Subdivision. This is the thing. I mean, there are housing developments being planned in different parts of the country that are focused on an agricultural use because people like to be near the food, near where their food is grown. This is a major selling point for some new housing developments. So in a lot of ways, I think the work that's being done here through all of the Reimagining participants and people outside of that is innovative and leading this edge about, you know, what people want to live near. People want to live near where their food is grown. Which brings us back to where we began, you know, the Reimagining projects. Before Mansfield became a vintner, he built a lot of really nice houses. And so as the economy begins to turn, the thing is, the vineyard that he's created at Chateau Huff is something that people would, in fact, like to live near. So managing this moment of decline in ways that set up opportunities for future redevelopment and future regrowth. So with that, the only thing I wanted to add is that, you know, the real flawed idea behind the shrinking cities terminology is it makes it sound like we're going from something to nothing, and that's not what's happening here. Cleveland is moving from something to something else. And we're not exactly sure just yet what that something else is. And there's always some anxiety amid that uncertainty. But I do think that the real luxury of vacant land is that it gives us the flexibility to experiment, to in fact reimagine what the city could be, and then to reimagine it again. So I'm really thrilled to see all of this work underway, and I just hope that you all are inspired by the 56 projects and leave here tonight and come up with your own. So thank you very much.